as we move forward with this debate. And as the governor said, she has made it clear to us that she wants us to make sure that the numbers speak for the policy and that we're making these decisions based upon the best information that we have available to us and the best thoughts that can be generated by the folks that we have available to us. And I also want to take the opportunity, before I get into a discussion of the details of ACES, but I also wanted to give the opportunity to someone who I believe is an Alaskan hero who I had the privilege to work for some years ago, and now I have the privilege to work with as a member of the same cabinet, Tom Rowan, Fairbanks' son, who I hope you all will help me welcome to come up and talk a little bit about.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Pat Gelver. Since we seem to have started out talking about clothes, I've got a comment I will make. And I am a true Fairbanksan, and I love being here, and make no mistake about it. But to the contrary, and honestly, when I drove up, an individual brought over a package to me. When I get back to the office, I'm going to have to declare this as ethics gifts. It was a bag full of ties. And I believe that, and clip-ons, by the way, because I guess they assume I can't tie ties, which probably can't. But the moral of the story is I think they want me to represent Fairbanks a little more dressed up when I go out. So, any rate, tie story. Commissioner of DNR, and why am I part of this? I'm part of this because we have an administration that is so different and so better. There's teamwork. You don't have a separate entity of revenue and a separate entity of law and a separate entity of DNR. When the governor gave her guidelines, and they're very wise guidelines, we want a process that's transparent, that's as open as possible, a process that's fair for Alaskans' income and revenue, and fair for all the other participants, and then a process that incentivizes our future, our exploration, our development, and ultimately our revenue. All of those were in there, and she correctly gave that responsibility to revenue because this is a tax revenue issue. But the governor and Pat then invited us to be part of it. And it is appropriate. We have tremendous capabilities in modeling. We have people who have tremendous knowledge about the slope and how these pieces work together. And bottom line, we have real teamwork in the administration. We concur with the results. We've been very much a part of it, and it's very easy to support this presentation. So, Governor and Pat both, thank you for letting us be part of it.
Thank you, Tom. So, starting off with the presentation, we're going to provide, real quickly, let's go to the first slide. I'm going to give you a brief overview of ACES, just run through the nuts and bolts of how we got here, the types of things that we were looking at, and really what ACES is about. And then we're going to move into the opportunity for information and discussion. And as I mentioned, what we've set up is we've set up 3 different stations in the room to try to address 3 of the major areas that we believe we are hearing a lot of questions about. And then we've also got an area up here in the front, and I'm going to have Deputy Commissioner Marcia Davis. Marcia, stand up just so people can see. Marcia.
I'm in orange.
She's the one in orange or in peach. And she'll be up here and will act as a navigator. If you have a question as to which of the stations might address your particular area of interest, she can direct you there, or if it's not covered specifically, she'll discuss it with you up here. But why don't we go through the overview of ACES? So why ACES? Why are we even discussing this issue right now? And the bottom line is the governor recognized in the spring that PPT is not a stable tax system, given the issues that surrounded its passage, particularly when you look back at the relationship between ACES, when PPT as a production tax on oil and gas, and its linkage to the Stranded Gas Development Act that was being discussed, that the contract with the 3 producers on the gas line, they were part and parcel of the same deal. And the administration came forward to the legislature with a tax plan that was intended to set in place a set of rules that would be there for 35 years. But there were certain pieces of it that were also connected to a contract that never came to be. Then we move into the election, and the contract, from my point of view, is thoroughly rejected by the people of Alaska and the legislature. And we move into the new administration coming in, and Governor Palin, in her State of the State back in January, said that she was skeptical of PPT, that she would have preferred that it would be more transparent, that it would be something that would be based on a gross value, and that she would be keeping a close eye on it. And if there were any surprises, she would want to revisit it. And in the fall, or in the spring, we got some surprises. Initially, we received checks in the form of initial payments under PPT that were less than what were expected. And the reports that came in with it included costs associated with the deductions on the fields that were significantly higher than what were anticipated, what were discussed with the legislature just a few months earlier. And then there were the indictments and the issues surrounding the votes and the public corruption issues that followed. And all of this together, all these things led to a recognition that PPT as a tax structure, it does not have the confidence of the public and is not going to provide the state with a long-term solution until we address these issues and provide that sense of confidence. And we believe now is the time to do that. So as we looked at PPT, and we looked at the structure of it and the obligations that it provided to the state, particularly the Department of Revenue, in implementing the system, what we recognized were a number of things. First off, on the economic side, we looked at, can it be structured differently? And we talked a little bit earlier in the remarks by the governor and by Commissioner Irwin about the difference between a gross and a net approach. And my department and the Department of Natural Resources did a tremendous amount of analysis of a type that had never been done by the state before, because of the ability to compare notes between the departments and have the particular field economic data that was available to the Department of Natural Resources become integrated in the revenue projection numbers and trying to balance that relationship between trying to generate the revenue but making sure that you don't have a negative impact on the fields that we're trying to bring online and keep the economics positive so these companies will go forward with their investment decisions. And we were able to run a large number of different models of different types of taxes, different gross taxes with different credit structures, different net taxes with different rates on the different knobs that you can turn. And we were able to see the relationship of how these things affected the economics of those fields and ultimately the revenue for the state. And in the end, we came back to the governor and we had to recognize that we could not identify a gross tax structure that would provide the revenue expectations and not impact the economics of particular fields that we would see coming in the near future. And that was disappointing to us, but it was something that we had to recognize, as the governor said from the beginning, that this is going to be driven by analysis, driven by the facts, driven by the numbers. And with that recognition came the realization that, okay, so what happens when you have a net tax? We had a year of experience trying to implement the provisions of PPT, and through that we recognized there were a number of issues with PPT that did not protect the state's interests. And those were things that we knew had to be fixed if you were going to propose something that included as a component of it a net-based tax. And so we focused our attention both on how to get a tax structure that was going to meet the state's interests, but also